Hey, welcome back to Musings of a Jesus Lover. Today I want to talk about why Israel matters. And before I go into a little bit of the scriptural references as to why it matters, let me say at the outset that I'm not talking about the political and social decisions that the nation of Israel has made. Israel has behaved badly at times, and that's in the social, political realm, and everything that goes on around that. There's a lot of discussions to be had there, and it doesn't defend everything they have done. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about, from a biblical perspective, why Israel matters so much and why it has been such a problem. For millennia, the nation of Israel has been a spot on the earth that keeps getting all the attention and causing all the trouble. Why is that? The answer is found throughout the Old Testament, but in particular in Genesis chapter 15. There's a man named Abram, who later his name will be changed to Abraham. And God calls him out and says, I'm going to take you to a land, I'm going to show you a place. And in Genesis chapter 15, he says, I am the Lord who brought you out of the Ur of the Chaldeans, that's where Abram had lived, to give you this land to take possession of it. And Abram responds and says, Sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? And in the verses that follow, there's a description of a process. The Lord begins to tell Abram, later Abraham, go get some animals. He specifies what kind of animals. He says, and cut them in two and lay them one half on one side and one half on the other side, which, if we're not familiar with the practices of the time, this seems really weird to us, but it was not uncommon. It's called blood covenant, and we do not have time now to go in depth on that. We could spend weeks with hour-long sessions talking about what all that means and how that works. But suffice it to say that blood covenant was common, and this was the practice. Animals would be cut in half, they would be laid on each side, and the participants in the covenant would stand between the two in the blood and make their vows of what they're going to do, not going to do, whatever the terms of the covenant were, and they would do it in the blood. They may or may not drink some blood, customs varied around that, but it was called blood covenant, and it was absolutely holy in the eyes of the culture. No one broke covenant. If you broke covenant, your own family would come and kill you. I mean, this was solemn stuff. So when Abram asks him, how do I know this is going to happen? God says, go prepare a blood covenant. And as we read through the story, Moses does all this. Then we're told that Moses is set aside and a deep sleep falls on him. And yet he does, in this state, see what's happening. And there are two beings, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp, that go into the blood that form this covenant. Those two beings are God the Father and Jesus. That's really where the promise is being made. And what he promises him is that he's going to give you this land. I'm going to bless you. There's a lot of things that are said, but what they say in there at the end of it, he says, to your descendants, I give this land. And then he describes the boundaries. We're not going to go into that, of what this land is. And every time this covenant is referred to, the Lord refers to it as an everlasting covenant. He made an eternal, everlasting covenant with Moses as the recipient, but the actual covenant is made between the Father and Jesus, saying, I am giving this land to this man's descendants. Now here's why it matters and why it's been such a problem. Because the practice of Old Covenant, the whole purpose of blood covenant, of laying out those animals, is to say, I'm making this vow and this promise. If I break this promise, what you see done to these animals can be done to me. There are plenty of examples of it in history as well as in the Bible. You break a blood covenant, your life is forfeit. As I said earlier, your own family will track you down and they will kill you. You do not break blood covenant. Now imagine Abram being familiar with this, seeing God Almighty swear a blood covenant. So what he's saying is, I'm going to give you this land. I'm going to give it to your descendants and they're going to have it. Here's the boundaries. I will do that or I will be killed. So God makes a covenant and says, if I don't give this land to you and your descendants, I will be destroyed. Again, I could spend an hour talking about all the history and showing how that's what he said, but that's what that meant. Now, God is not alone. right? He has enemies. There is a demonic force. There is a real person named Satan. We'll do another session on that. Who heard that and who understands that God has to be destroyed if I can keep the land out of the hands of the Jewish people. So what's the best way to do that? Kill them all. If all the Jews die, when the last Jew dies, it's impossible for God to fulfill the covenant and give all of that land to those people. And God dissolves in some sort of destruction and the devil wins. That's obviously not going to happen. But look at the history. How many times have people devoted their lives to the destruction of the Jewish people? Obviously Hitler. What about right now? And the Palestinian, Muslim, Arab world promising to drive Israel into the sea and destroy all the Jews. Go back further in history. This happened time and time again. There's always this effort to destroy the Jewish people and keep them out of that land. Because when they get all the land, the covenant is fulfilled. If they don't get the land, the covenant is broken and the devil wins. So there has been a battle, and it is a spiritual battle, not just a fleshly one. Look past the socio-political stuff. There is a battle for that land that matters because everything hangs on it. Of course, God's going to win, but that's why there is a battle. Every attempt for Israel to possess that land is resisted by the most powerful demonic forces in the spirit realm. And that all rains down into the physical realm when we see everything that's happening around there. This is why Israel matters. This is why it matters what the church does in regard to the nation of Israel. This is why it matters what our government does in regard to the nation of Israel. Again, I'm not defending socio-political choices that the government of Israel has made. I'm not saying everything that happens there is appropriate and it's right. There needs to be a way of treating Palestinians, the other people, in a way that is humane, the way that God would do it, who is gracious and compassionate. And they mess that up all the time. But make no mistake, the land of Israel, as described in the Bible, not as it currently is going to the descendants of Abraham. They are going to have it. And to resist that is just, it's futile and destructive. We are better off working for it rather than against it. And we need to do that compassionately and graciously, and we're missing the mark on that. But it's a matter of prayer and a matter of spiritual warfare over Israel. That's why Israel matters. That's why they're in the news all the time, and that's why it's so important how we respond to that. Israel matters. God made a promise to his own destruction that that land will be possessed by Abraham's descendants. Why would you want to fight against that?